Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashwati Dilip, the Managing Director of ITDP India. I, along with my colleagues, we represent a global nonprofit organization, the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, that is supporting cities across the world in embracing sustainable, inclusive, and equitable urban mobility and development. Today, I am honored to have all of you with us for this roundtable, Compact Cities, Pathways Towards India's Sustainable Mobility Future. We are delighted to have with us our Honorable Chair, Mr. Jaideep, Officer on Special Duty Urban Transport, ex officio Joint Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, who has been instrumental in the creation of an extensive network of metros in cities across the country, as well as several important improvements to the Indian railways as well. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. Joining Jaideep, sir, and me is an esteemed panel. We have with us Mr. Shekhar Singh, IAS, the Commissioner, Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation. He's been leading PCMC to become a lighthouse city for sustainable mobility, and with various initiatives such as the award-winning Harit Setu Master Plan, the development of the EV Readiness Plan, as well as even with the launch of PCMC's first municipal bonds. Along with him, we have Gerald Olivier, the lead transport specialist, South Asia Transport World Bank, who's been focusing on developing solutions to enhance urban mobility, as well as unlock the markets for electric mobility and look at how we can integrate multimodal transport solutions, as well as achieve safer transport for serving the citizens better. We have with us Ms. Ananta Paladugla, the head of Mobility India at C40, who's been supporting electrification of freight and passenger transport and inclusive climate action in Indian cities. Ananta, thank you so much for joining us, as Shruti couldn't join us at the last minute. We have Mr. Sharif Kamar, the Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance Division of the Energy Resources Institute. Mr. Kamar has worked on several projects, public transportation, cycling, long distance, as well as urban freight, and various topics relating to climate-resilient city governance. From France, we have Mr. Thierry Diclot, the Project Director for International Affairs at CEREMA, the public agency of the French Government of Ecology in charge of urban development, mobility, and climate change. They're working with French cities to embrace sustainable mobility. Also, from the Dutch side, we have Ms. Shelley Bonche, the project manager at Dutch Cycling Embassy, who's supporting cities in implementing active and environmentally friendly modes of transport, which she believes is key to enable an inclusive society for all. And from our own global office, we have Mr. Jacob Mason, the Research and Impact Director, ITDP Global. He specializes in strategic research that drives the conversation ahead about sustainable transportation and development, and his team has played an important part in working on the Compact Cities electrified publication. Thank you. Our respected panelists, we have a deep sense of gratitude for having all of you with us today. I would also like to take a moment to welcome everyone in the audience for joining us. And we would like to have an interactive round of questions with the panelists, so please keep your questions ready for that time as well. So as we jump into our session, the next 25 years leading to India at 100 is envisioned as the Amrit Kal by our Honorable Prime Minister. During this period, the urban population in our cities is expected to surge. Studies state that more than 50% of our country's population is expected to live in our urban areas by 2050. So today, what we'd like to discuss is what are the pathways to create the sustainable cities of tomorrow that focuses on Sabke Saath and Sabka Vikas. As we delve into what we need to do in the next 25 years, we'd like to take a moment to pause and absorb where we are. To help that, I would like to invite Ms. Vaishali Singh, the Deputy Manager, Transport Systems and Electric Mobility, ITDP India, to make a brief presentation. Vaishali works on various projects on electrification, public transport, and urban development, and she also leads the Transport for All Challenge program, which we're working in collaboration with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and the World Bank and other partners as well. Vaishali, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. I think I'll start off this discussion where how we started looking at sustainable transportation in India back from 2006, which was a transformative year for India because it was the year where Government of India launched National Urban Transport Policy, which for the first time looked at prioritizing people over vehicles. And since the policy has been released, there have been various initiatives which the Government of India has taken to make sure that we move towards that goal of moving people. So since then, since 2006, we have had various initiatives, schemes, and policies that the Government of India has launched, including JNNURM, Smart Cities Mission, FAME 1 and 2 schemes, and very recently the PM E-Bus Seva scheme as well. And as a result of these schemes, policies, and initiatives that the government have taken, we have been able to transform public transportation, walking and cycling infrastructure in the country. Just taking a quick look at what has been the journey over the last 2 decades. So under the JNNURM scheme, FAME, and PM E-Bus Seva scheme, we have been able to have provision of around 30,000 buses in the country. That's almost the quantum of all of the buses which are currently in the urban domain itself. And not just that, we have been able to transform public transportation as well, take steps towards prioritization of public transport. And we have implemented more than 300 kilometers of public transportation in more than 10 cities across the country. Not just that, we are also focusing on rapid transportation as well, where the Government of India has invested a lot in making sure that we have rapid transportation in at least 15 cities across the country. We have 850 kilometers of operational network in the country right now, and over 600 kilometers is under construction, which would be implemented in the upcoming years. On the walking and cycling space, just sharing a few snippets of what the street transformation work has looked like across the cities in the country. From Srinagar to Bhubaneswar to Chennai, we have seen transformation happening. And under, again, JNNURM and Smart Cities Mission, we have seen more than 1,000 kilometers of streets which have been transformed to ensure that they are now safe and livable streets for everyone in the country. Not just that, the government since 2015 has put accelerated focus towards electrification, identifying the change in emerging technologies, embracing that change, and ensuring that India moves towards it. We have seen the launch of the FAME 1 and 2 schemes. We have seen several states adopt the EV policies, and again, the PM E-Bus Seva scheme as well, which has been focusing on electric buses. And through all of these initiatives, we have seen that 26 states in the country have EV policies right now. They have set targets for electrification of transportation. And because of that, India is looking at around 6% of new sales of electrification in the country to embrace electrification itself. But then despite all of these efforts which have happened in the last 2 decades, we are still seeing private motor vehicles increasing unabated in the country. Around 10 crore vehicles were added in the country over 60 years till 2008, and the same quantum was added in just the next 6 years. Shows the accelerated rate at which the private motor vehicles are increasing. And to put it in perspective, the urban population grew by 26%, whereas the private motor vehicles in the same last 10 years have grown by 138%. And because of that, there are a lot of negative externalities that private motor vehicle use is causing, including congestion. Just the top 4 cities in the country, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Kolkata, are losing 1.5 lakh crores a year because of people getting stuck in congestion alone. And not just that, of course, when people are using more private motor vehicles, they're causing more congestion. There are a lot of impacts which that pollution causes on the health of the people. And because of that, India now ranks second in terms of the deaths which are caused by transport emission, just after China. And around 10% of the air pollution deaths are responsible because of the transport emission in the country. And off late, we have been seeing that a lot of our cities, I think in Delhi as well, all of us are here, you might have observed, has been sprawling a lot. Our cities are expanding like anything. And around 55% of people is already living in these sprawled areas. What is causing right now is increased lengths. People have to commute longer hours to reach the city center. And often these people who are living in these suburban areas don't have access to proper infrastructure. The water supply, sewerage, electricity, often all of these sprawled areas don't have proper access to these infrastructures as well. So then what is it that can be done? And if this scenario continues till 2050, we would see that there would be an 8x increase in the number of private motor vehicles in the country. Imagine what that would look like. We are already looking at congestion. We are already looking at pollution. And an 8x increase, our cities would just be choked, not just because of traffic, because of air pollution as well. So we tried to look at what we could do and what India's future could look like in terms of different scenarios if India was to adopt. First, looking at what the business as usual scenario would look like, where we continue with the pace we are embracing walking, cycling, and public transportation, and the way private motor vehicles have been increasing. Second, looking at what electrification would look like if 100% of the vehicles were to become electric. What would it look like for India in terms of emissions? Third, looking at mode shift. If people are able to shift to sustainable transportation modes like walking, cycling, and public transportation, and on top of that, the use of private motor vehicles has been restricted. And fourth, the approach of looking at electrification and shift together. And in the research that ITDP and University of California has done, we have found out that only the electrification plus shift scenario is sufficient, and that's the only scenario which would ensure that we achieve our net zero target by 2070. It is also the only scenario which would ensure that we limit our climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius in this century. The other two scenarios, which are looking at electrification and mode shift, do cause a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but then it's not enough to cause the target or to achieve the target that we want to achieve. Not just that, if we look at electrification alone, yes, it would cause a lot of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but then there are a lot of negative externalities associated with a higher use of even electric cars. There are life cycle emission costs which are associated with it. When people use higher motor vehicles, you have to invest more in paving and maintaining those roads, in production of steel and batteries to support that large number of vehicles, and of course, in disposal of those batteries as well. So if we want to achieve the net zero target by 2070, it's important to reduce those life cycle emissions as well. And again, the only scenario it actually enables it is to look at both electrification and shift towards sustainable transportation modes. And it wouldn't just be, something that the people would look forward to. It's something that the government can also benefit from. By looking at an electrification and shift scenario, the government would be able to save 400 lakh crores through 2050. The same amount which could be invested in providing other essential infrastructure like healthcare, schools, colleges, so that the quality of life that the people have could be increased. Of course, you do need a lot of cost towards expanding public transportation as well, but they are really offset by the amount that would have reduced by not investing or reducing the investment towards paying pavement of new roads and highways, which would be a requirement if private motor vehicles increase. Just pausing here to play a quick 1-minute video of what lies ahead and what India could focus on and how could they achieve the electrification plus shift.
We've seen a lot of news about climate change recently. We might feel overwhelmed. Let's breathe. The situation isn't hopeless. There is a way for us to face the climate crisis, save money, and live better. How? By transforming our cities. We need electric vehicles. Electric buses and cars produce less pollution, less noise, and less carbon. We won't be able to stop climate change without them. Electric vehicles still need power plants, car factories, and big highways, which all cause carbon emissions. We can also help by making our cities more compact. With services, workplaces, and homes all in the same neighborhoods, people won't need to travel as much by car. We need to redesign streets with bike lanes and bus lanes. We need trains and sidewalks. We need to make it easy for people to get around the city without ever needing a car. Trains, buses, and bicycles are less expensive than cars, batteries, and highways. That means more funds for schools, parks, and healthcare. We'll save so much money on transportation that we could build to tens of thousands of new hospitals worldwide every year. It is time for our cities to become resilient, healthy, affordable, equitable, safe, and most of all, sustainable. Let's build them. Learn more about the possible scenarios and their outcomes in the new report from ITDP and UC Davis, The Compact City Scenario Electrified, the only way to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
So I would end here on sort of a positive note. So Paris was able to decrease their car travel by almost 50% in 30 years. It is possible, it has been done, and it can be done in India. And in this discussion today, we would be looking at what India can do differently to shift people towards sustainable modes of transportation, walking, cycling, and public transportation, at the same time embracing compact cities and also ensuring that the cars which are clean are also limited in terms of their use as well. Back to you, Ashwati.
Thank you so much, Vaishali. So while I think she ended with a bit of a positive note, today's situation still seems kind of grave. Like she said in the beginning, our newspapers are screaming out loud about the uncontrollable congestion, about the increasing air quality concerns, and the numerous healthy lives that we're losing on our streets. And as I was speaking to Sir earlier today, and he was talking about what are some of our, as a citizen, what is our individual stories. So when my children were born, even before they turned 1 year old, the doctor said that they had asthmatic traits. And so neither me nor my husband have any respiratory problems. When he turned 7, he's been wanting to cycle to school. Unfortunately, he has to travel through highways to reach there, which he doesn't understand the intensity of the concern. But even being a sustainable transport advocate, it makes me skip a heartbeat. And I'm constantly navigating with him to say, can we discuss this the next year once you become slightly bigger? And it hit me really hard when my father, who, though he's 65, extremely healthy person, suddenly early this year had a health issue. And he was somebody who used to use the metro very often. Because of his health issue, he also had a bit of a mental concern. He began to have a fear of navigating these vehicles while he goes to use the metro. In the last 9 months, thankfully he's doing much better now. But just because of that minor health condition, the city changed for us. It was no longer something that we could navigate when we were healthy. And this comes at a time when we in India are setting ambitious goals, saying that our Honorable Prime Minister pledged that we would achieve net zero by 2070. And this study actually shows that we are doing things. However, we do need to do this in an extremely accelerated manner to be able to achieve the creation of compact cities built on the foundation of walking, cycling, and public transport, where private vehicles are controlled, but the ones that are there are clean. And when we take an overview, sir, it seems that from 2017, as we started shifting towards electrification, today we have 26 states that have adopted an EV policy. Yet the NUTP policy, which was launched in 2006 by the Urban Transport Department of Mohua, which transformed and said that we need to move people and not vehicles. And this is a tagline we hear everywhere. Yet the states, or at the state level, we do not see that level of policies adopted with targets set for the cities when it comes to sustainable mobility. So here, sir, I'd like to respectfully invite you to share your opening remarks, set the stage for our discussion going ahead.
First of all, I welcome everyone here, and I am delighted and excited to be part of this roundtable conference and a very apt topic, which is compact cities, pathways towards India's sustainable mobility future. As we, in opening inaugural session, Minister has told that population, urban population is increasing, and by 2050 we may touch 800 million population. And with increase in population in urban area, the boundaries of urban area is also increasing. And we are seeing this phenomena since our childhood days. Today we have discussed that we have a robust network of 895 kilometer of metro network in 20 cities. Within 2-3 years, another 965 kilometer will be added. But why we are going for such huge expansion? Because our cities are expanding, our population is increasing, and if we don't provide such kind of sustainable transport solution, then cities are not going to survive. But because of this topic, when this title came for discussion in our technical committee meeting, so it excited me. I know there will be lot of things that electrification should be done, then more number of buses, more number of transport system. But in my opinion, that I agreed to chair this session, and I want to. I think this story is applicable to my colleague Mr. Lohia also, who is from my age group from railway service also. I belong to Uttar Pradesh, and I come from a medium-sized town. In my childhood days, I spent there, and everything was at walkable distance from my residence, be it marketplace, be it going to cinema theater with my parents, or hospital, or anywhere. Even my relatives used to live in an around area, and we just need to walk and go to their places. Even in that time, I used to go by on my bicycle to my school. And those days 6-7 kilometer used to be very big distance, and I used to go on my bicycle with no helmet, nothing risk, which madam was telling that she has a risk because traffic is more on urban roads. No, you cannot send your kid on cycle. But I used to go on cycle, and if my mother has to travel, goes from somewhere to other place, or a small kid is there, then we used to have manual rickshaw. All these things, cycle and rickshaw, we call non-motorized transport system. At that time, we call it rickshaw and cycle. Then we have changed. We have seen that in our cities, there used to be very few two-wheelers, and four-wheeler was very, it used to be after say half an hour you can see four-wheeler going in front of your house. So what happened that initially two-wheeler came in urban area. Then it was a preferred mode because it was very handy thing, and people used to go their office, reach quickly to their offices. And what has happened, what we have seen with increase in two-wheelers, we have seen this expansion of urban roads. Then came four-wheelers. Again, more expansion of road, more expansion of cities, but with four-wheeler, because of larger occupancy of road, congestion has increased. Then came industrialization. Industrial hub was planned at that time where I was residing in my childhood days. It was planned 20 kilometers away. That industrial hub has come. Then many industry also started coming around that area, and whole area got developed, city got expanded. Once this employment opportunities increased, population also increased. The best example in NCR, if you see Delhi, Gurugram and Noida, they started with industrial things. With increase in population, what has happened that we lost this affordable accommodation in the core of the city. The best example is Mumbai. One cannot afford this in South Mumbai. You cannot afford a flat. The person has to move to suburb. Then, if you are going away, then what is happening? Your commute distance is increasing. Now this has gone. Now recent this Delhi Meerut RRTS is coming, and now we have gone from suburban system to regional connectivity. 82 kilometer we will reach in less than an hour, 50 minutes. People can get affordable accommodation in Meerut and came to Delhi and then go back to their places. So, in my opinion, this is what the city we want. Now, what is modern city? Modern city definition is you have highways, you have viaducts, you have high-rise buildings. This is the city definition. But is it environmental friendly? In my opinion, no. What is happening that in these cities, this mobility has become a transport biased mobility. What it entails, it is dominance of motorization. Because if you want to travel from one part of the city to other part of the city, you cannot use an MT. If you have to go to 20 kilometer with this climate condition of Delhi or all other places nearby, you can't travel and see the traffic condition of the road. So we have to see what needs to be done. So in my opinion, this compact city, the topic which you have chosen, is very, very apt. What we should do with this compact city, what we are aiming to reduce requirement of transportation system. And what presentation has been made, that with electrification, net zero target 2070 can be easily achieved. So this is compact cities along with electrification. Your net zero target is achievable, 2070 is achievable. But if we are having big cities, people will have preference for their personal vehicle, then there will be urban transport system. So these are the things. And now what I found key for compact city and electrification, what is there? There is a missing link between city planning and transport planning. They should come together. And whatever electrification you will do, if you have more number of vehicle, whether it is electrical vehicle or any might on the electrical system, it is working. If you do even 100% electrification, what will happen? In COVID pandemic time, the best color of sky I could see in my childhood days, then I have seen when everything was locked down. So there is always a factor of tail emission and non-tail emission. So unless your dependence upon transport system is reduced, you cannot reduce. Then non-tail emission will come into picture if more number of vehicles are there. So I will not take much of time because many esteemed speakers are there, and if I start speaking on this subject, then the audience will lose this opportunity to listen to experts. So I will stop here and listen to the views of our expert panel, and let's have this fruitful discussion. And some takeaway should be there, because this is a very, very relevant topic, because everybody is talking about urban transport system, electrical vehicle system. It's a unique topic. So I want best persons are there. They can give their views and let us hear them, and we should have a way forward after this roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time out and being here with our panel, setting the right direction, focusing on the need to reduce dependence on transport systems themselves, and highlighting the need for integration of transport and urban development. So thank you so much, sir. With the fact that you have set the stage now for our panelists, I would like to open the discussion to our panelists. We hope to have 2 rounds of questions, and hence we'd really request you all to keep the answers brief as well. So from the national government vision that so you have set, we'd like to first move to the city government. Mr. Shekhar Singh, so PCMC is one of those cities that is really pioneering action towards sustainable mobility. What we wanted to hear from you are, what are your reflections, sir? Do you think that you have the ambitious vision in place, and are you set and ready to run to achieve that? What are some of the goals, and what are some of the gaps that you are facing right now? Over to you, sir.
So in terms of sustainable transport systems, it runs at multiple levels. That sir was saying, in India, the problem becomes at urban planning and 3.2 million now. And we are talking about compact cities, but as sir said, it's ever increasing geographically also. And new villages are coming in. Now there is a renewed push for about 7 villages to be coming into the city. But in terms of the sustainable transport, I think PCMC has done a great job when it comes to non-motorized transport. We have currently about 120 kilometers of improved pedestrian walkways and cycle tracks, and we are learning from 2018 till now. And one major learning that we had in terms of NMT, and coincidentally last year we issued our non-motorized transport policy as well. 15 September 2022 we issued that policy. One of the major learnings that we've learned while we've been implementing these policies, and the push really started with smart city, but PCMC has been able to take it forward apart from the smart city as well, and we are doing a lot of works through our own budgets and through our other things, has been to provide a connectivity. What sir was mentioning about neighborhood, to provide a connectivity once you start from your house, if you're walking or if you're cycling, whether you have the confidence enough in terms of safety, as you were saying about your kid, to walk or cycle from point A to point B. Currently in cities, and PCMC is one of those cities which are still very, very two-wheeler dependent. Almost a 60 to 70% of this private transport is about two-wheelers. So we are trying to, and that's a project, that's a whole mission that we've taken for ourselves, which we are calling as Harit Setu. We recently won the Bloomberg Initiative Grant 2023 also for that. And the whole concept about Harit Setu is, can we create a whole neighborhood where we have a non-motorized transport option for people available? So if I want to go from my home to a saloon or to a market or to a nearby grocery, can I not use my two-wheeler? Can I not use my car? And can I walk? Can I cycle? So we are trying to create this neighborhood concept. We are starting with one neighborhood this year. We are piloting it from that one neighborhood and moving on throughout the city, but that would take about 10 to 12 years. And you asked about the gaps, that involves money. So, and that involves quite a bit of money if I am to improve the whole neighborhood. But the concept that we're trying to take in that neighborhood is also that not all roads or all streets need to suddenly start having cycle tracks. That's not possible. We have varying widths. And frankly speaking, even till now, there's a lot of confusion in the minds of the people that why are we creating cycling tracks? There are not enough people right now. But what we fail to understand and what we are trying to communicate to even to our people is that if I don't give a road, a tarred bitumen road, there is not going to be any car walking through the fields, or driving through the fields. Same is the case with the cycle. Same is the case with the person who wants to cycle, not from a leisure or health perspective, but from a day-to-day, daily core perspective also, which is very important. So we are taking this neighborhood concept, and I think it's an interesting, exciting concept, which over the next 10 to 12 years, we hope to expand throughout the city. The target, as you said, is currently the public transport and non-motorized transport modal percentage in PCMC is about 50%. The target, the ambitious one, is by 2036, we've set our target in our NMT policy also to move it from 50 to 90. But that's a bit of a very high ambitious ceiling of the target that we have kept for ourselves, but that would require a lot of things. That would require, say, a metro network, which is now coming. That would require us to be connecting these neighborhoods to the metro networks. The last mile connectivity that we've all been talking about in terms of metro, that would also require strengthening our bus system. One very interesting study study that we did with ITDP about people near transit, is that only probably 10 to 12% people would be living in close distance to metro. Still 97% people are in close distance to a transit which is dependent on bus. So we often forget that thing, and I was discussing with the team also recently that we need to start emphasizing it more and more, that apart from metro, it's also the bus system which needs strengthening. So currently we have about 2,100 buses in our city. Medium estimate is 3,500. The high level estimate is 7,000. So this journey from 2,000 to 7,000 is still a long distance away. And then we need to have the target towards electrification as well. But I would like to just maybe a final comment and then I'll stop. You said about time. I think I'm exceeding mine. I think we also need to keep a very keen eye in regards to the electrification as far as Indian context is concerned. One problem that we've observed in electric buses in Pune, for example, because of our weather conditions and all, the gates opening and closing at every bus stop, the AC that is working and the temperature variations that are there, the opportunity charging and the time with the bus is idle with regards to charging is also something which is reducing the efficiency of how many people we are able to transport through the bus. So I would still say that we need to also keep a keen eye on maintaining a healthy mix of electric plus CNG also. CNG is lesser of the evils, not probably the perfect thing, but unless and until the entire grid also converts to a renewable grid, I think CNG is not a bad option till then. So I think that's also a mix that we're discussing in PMPML internally also, to have a healthy mix of both electric and CNG buses. That's it. In terms of the compact city, if I could quickly add also, Maharashtra has come out with transit-oriented development policy along the metro networks, about 500 meters from each metro station. And that is what we've been discussing, what Sir was saying, that because the affordable housing is not available in the core of the city, people go out. So the whole concept of TOD now, which we need to start implementing, is to have affordable housing near the metro stations. And that is something that can really push the mandate, not just along the metros, but also along the BRTS.
Sure. Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I will come.
Yeah, sure, sir. We look forward to having you back.
Other sessions.
Yes, sir.
And thank you so much, Shekhar Singh, sir. To be one of those cities in India which has a comprehensive vision that truly focuses on sustainable mobility. And while you said that, one of the big gaps is funding, we do have a funder here. And but more importantly, you also mentioned about the multiplicity of agencies. Like all of this that we want to do, this comprehensive vision just requires so many agencies to come together. So that also came to me as one of those pieces. And the fact that we're just scratching the surface when it comes to TOD as well. So one thing that I found very interesting, that you mentioned, was about how when it comes to electrification, there's a lot that we still need to understand, especially with the Indian context. And here, Jacob, I'd like to bring you in, where I just wanted you to elaborate on some of these specific findings, where why is it that we really need to focus more on sustainable mobility? Maybe we could push our states to have sustainable mobility policies in every state, just like we have the EV policies, but maybe you could add a few points there.
Yeah, thank you, Ashpati. So our study was really interesting. And I think maybe one point that hasn't really come up is that a lot of other organizations, including GIZ from the German government, the OECD, and ICCT, have conducted similar studies to our compact cities electrified and had very similar findings in terms of the need for both electrification and more compact cities, which I think is really interesting. So we're in very alignment across different approaches and methodologies towards this topic. But we really found that there's benefits across a lot of different areas, as Vaishali mentioned, but just want to reiterate the shift in cost. It's 25% savings from a more compact electrified scenario, 75% less energy required for the transportation system, 75% lower emissions, which means better health outcomes, less respiratory disease and healthcare costs, with massive reduction, 60% less private vehicle travel. That has huge implications for road safety, for road injuries and deaths, in preventing that, with a massive benefit in terms of human lives improved. In addition to the numbers, there's huge equity implications. I think, as we all know, a more car-centric planning, more car-centric transportation system is harder for poor people to get around. It's more expensive, it's more dangerous, it's more time consuming for everyone outside of a car. And for those who can't afford a car, it's more expensive to get around. And this makes it harder to reach jobs, services, education, and it acts as sort of a tax on everyone for transportation. We also talked about geometry. It's really harder for the transportation system to work if you have twice as many people using 8 times as many vehicles as currently exist. And so I think everyone knows that if people use more efficient transportation, buses, trains, that the transportation system works better. But for people to make better choices, that transportation system has to be clean, convenient, comfortable, and affordable to a wide range of the population. And so it's really on the government to help make sure that that happens and to support that in a variety of ways. And we're hearing some great examples already. We did some numbers of a scenario for our compact electrified scenario. And it really is a huge paradigm shift, even from the business as usual. It's 75% fewer new roads, 10 times as much rapid transit than in the business as usual scenario, 16 times as many kilometers of bike infrastructure, and a massive increase in buses. And luckily, as we've heard, there's huge precedent for that. There's really great work already happening at the city level, at the state level, at the national level for this. So we're not talking about coming up with new ideas in a large sense. It's more about expanding the existing ideas. But I do want to make sure to point out that investment in really big roadways goes against the targets that we're talking about. As Shekhar Singh mentioned, connectivity is really important, and huge flyovers, huge urban highways, they really break that connectivity and make it harder for walking and cycling and public transport to be effective and convenient means of getting around. So really, I think that there's we've outlined the scenarios for going forward, and now it's really a choice of which one we want to pursue.
Thank you so much, Gerald. And I think, like you mentioned, it's great to hear that cities are already setting ambitious targets from 3,500 buses. Like you mentioned, 7,000 buses is what you have.
2 to 7.
Okay, 2,000 to 7,000. And similarly, the neighborhood transformation as well. So we hope there are more cities that are following the journey that you are sort of embarking. Very importantly, a big concern that Sir did mention about was with respect to funding. And, we often hear about the fact that you can know what the priorities of a city is when you look at where the budgets are allocated. And one amazing stakeholder that we have here who does bring the budget is you, Gerald. So what I really wanted to ask you was, Gerald, what do you think are the gaps and bottlenecks that our Indian cities face for this sort of a comprehensive vision? We've heard some that Sir's mentioned. And often development banks themselves, they tend to fund a lot of this fragmented pieces of sustainable transportation. So how do you think development banks can play that critical role in helping our cities achieve the comprehensive vision that they need to embark on in an accelerated timeline?
First, thank you, Ashwati. Really a pleasure to be with all of you and with this distinguished panel of speakers. I had an opportunity to visit Pune and your city, sir, in 2017. It looks like we should come back and have a more detailed conversation on the broader transformation that you have undertaken. One thing I would like to mention is the race is on, right? I mean, let's not be fooling ourselves. The next 10 years, 15 years are the determining years as to how the urbanization of India is going to shape, the quality of life, the competitiveness of your cities, more than just mere transport. I mean, a transport specialist, yes, but if you go to any city and you ask them what are your priorities, transport will be one of the priorities. The first thing will be jobs, typically, right? Quality of the environment, transport, access to amenities. The way people live, work, and play is really the driving force that needs to shape the entire ecosystem. And this is where the compact city story comes in very strongly, right? Now, there are many reasons why it's not happening that easily. I mean, the first one is it's not easy to do at all. Why? Because it needs a huge level of integration. It means your economists to work with your urban planner, with your transport planner, and then start putting the story together. It means long-term strategy. It means, short-term plans with financing associated with that. And that doesn't come naturally at all when the pressure is, I have a mandate of 3 years, I need to deliver things that people are going to see so that I can move to my next mandate and have something behind. And that's not pointing fingers at anybody, but that's a reality of why the race is on. Doing things simpler is what a lot of people opt to because they're not their attention span, but their, commitment span is limited in time. And all of these things take time. Now, there is no real alternative to develop competitive cities, quality urban environment, than to plan properly. And therefore, one needs to think about how do you bring all of these elements together. We have been having the pleasure to work with ITDP very closely in the city of Chennai, for example, where through the different engagement we had on land use planning and transport and water and so on and so forth, we realized that the city was aspiring to something a bit bigger, a bit more comprehensive in the approach. And what it meant was to look at a multi-phase program over 10 years, not a 3-year thing, over 10 years, and think through 6 different areas, how we could support the transition, the transformation of the city, how to create a vision for the metropolitan area that had been multiplied from 1,000 square kilometers to 6,000 square kilometers, how to create that vision, how to create the plan. And here you come to a fundamental feature of compact cities. The compact cities, if you think of it, have to deal with 3 very different types of environment. You have a greenfield environment. That's quite easy. You think about the new NCRTC line, the Namo Bharat line that was just opened recently. Here you're coming to certain areas that are not really developed. You have an opportunity to fully develop from scratch a compact city around it that will create a quality urban environment with the right density, achieving the kind of saving Jacob was mentioning, where you cut down by 30%, your investment cost per capita, the emission per capita, the energy. You create a well-integrated, serve all tranches of a population and urban environment. So that's a greenfield one, the simplest one of the 3. The second one is an infill one. Some areas have been developed, haphazardly. There is a little bit of development, but it's not quite structured. Here you can create an organization structure within the area with a grid, and that grid help define and shape the environment in ways that will create a compact environment with a good accessibility. And the last one, which is really complicated, is when you actually redo it, right? You have an area that really need to be
this plan to tangible actions on the ground. Where do you see are the missing gap?
Strategies will play a key role. Understanding the strategies also, they have to base their approach on key pillars. One is equity, engagement, environment, as well as these are the critical environment. These are the critical pillars which the city has to consider, along with inclusive climate action. So we encourage the cities to consider the multi-sectoral approach and then develop the climate action plans and support them to develop projects. So once when we say the projects, for example, for the city of Mumbai, we have supported developing the climate action plan, where we looked at a multi-sectoral aspect, and air quality as well as sustainable mobility are one of the key strategic areas where the city needed a lot of hand-holding and interaction to be happening. And that's where we played a key role in helping or partnering or supporting the public transport service provider because the public transport service provider is already moving towards a transition to e-buses, but to say a complete transition only happens when you have the supporting infrastructure as well as the clean energy. So that clean energy concept is something which we try to highlight, as well as encourage the city not only to have infrastructure supporting the clean energy, but also meet the renewable targets through this. So it will be like a gradual transition, but not immediate transition. But this is how one of the example which we have played when it comes to a city like Mumbai. And this is in line with the climate action plan targets which the city has set for themselves, which is like they want to go like zero emission targets by 2050, as well as like to reduce around like 40% of their emissions by 2040. So this is in line with the targets which the city has set themselves, and the projects and the action plans also support this kind of transition to happen. And some of the key challenges which we faced when we are doing this kind of activities is, one is definitely finance, and the other one is the institutional structure, like who is going to do what activity, who owns the land, who like how the energy is going to be, what sort of energy rate should be, the rate per kilowatt hour should be given. So these are different multi-sectoral discussions, and many stakeholders will be involved even at the city level. And this kind of engagement when we have with the cities, that's where C40 has played a critical role in filling the gaps for the finance as well as for the institutional structure. So this is one example.
Thank you so much, Ananta. It seems like, since Sir spoke, and we've been hearing multiplicity of institutions being a challenge, finance with being a challenge. These are challenges that are coming, and how different agencies have been helping, like the way Gerald mentioned about setting up of the Kumta that happened in Chennai, and the example that you shared for Mumbai as well. Now, moving on, for 50 years, Terry has been focusing on helping India embrace cleaner and sustainable future. Sharif, we now know that 26 states have adopted EV policy. So we're saying that in a compact city, we want the city to be compact. We want to make sure that there's walking, cycling, public transportation, which is what the foundation is built on, transit-oriented around it. At the same time, we do want cities to start transitioning to electrification, and like Ananta said, also move towards a renewable grid. So we have these states that have adopted these policies. But what are the critical actions that either the city or the state need to take to accelerate a shift to cleaner technologies? What do you think are things that we must do?
Yeah, thanks, Ashwati. And also thanks to the organizers, IDDP and Mahua, for inviting me and Terry to office. I use Metro. So both counts, I am kind of, meeting the 1.5 degree individual target as well. So on that note, I think there are multiple things that cities still need to figure out and undertake in their planning and implementation as well. And I remember a conversation with my former Director General, Dr. Ajay Mathur, on the comparison between, or efficiency between, a vertical city versus a horizontal city. And while doing the research work, it was the amount of research work done on this is limited, and particularly for Indian cities, there is a lack of information on the comparison, both from the energy consumption as well as transportation demand side. So there is a lack of, or a research gap there for authorities to take measures on, or informed decision on. Other aspect in terms of public transportation, you mentioned. In 1980, the share of public transport, buses particularly, was about 50%. Now, the 2010 number was 11%. That share has declined. What it also means, the role of private buses in our cities has also improved. Now, do we have regulations or policies related to incentivizing private buses to become part of the public transport system? So something there is often cities miss to, if you're talking about public sharing or ride sharing kind of platforms, it's very hard for the private agencies or operators to work on city level. So that's second part. In terms of the floor area ratio, the FAR thing, that's the metros, particularly if you look at Delhi, in 2015, they increased their floor area ratio around the metro line significantly, just to push for that, 5-minute walk to metro station kind of concept, or 15-minute walk. So that I think it's an ideal situation where right from the planning stage, where the DPRs or the alignment for metros are being planned, that concept of FAR increase in the neighborhood of the alignment is also undertaken, and worked with the corporations and agencies towards that objective is also could be one of the areas. In terms of often when we talk about cycling and non-motorized transport, we tend to ignore the behavioral aspect of transportation, and I face it personally when I cycle in my neighborhood for my daily errands. The attitude towards cyclists in our cities is, to say in a softer, deplorable in terms of how we are treated as cyclists, and we treat as cyclists when we are sitting behind the wheels as well. So that's a complaint I would, and that change I think would be a long-term change with patience, both from the money as well as the timeline wise. It can't be done overnight. The attitudinal change has to be coming in, and some of the work that ITDP also doing in this respect is quite commendable. I think these are some of the few points, and we are also proud. And the last, and I'll close and give it back to you, Ashwati. Delhi Metro initiated this concept on the behavioral aspect also, just to make people aware of how much carbon they save on their daily rounds. And we were happy to coordinate and work for Delhi Metro to work on their initiative called Carbon Light, where the, comparison between your public, private, metro transport is there on your ticket when you buy it. So that's something that we, and it's something that initiative that could be taken by multiple other metro and public transport agencies as well, buses as well. Sure. So I'll hand it back to you, Ashwati. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. First of all, for being the individual sustainable mobility champion. And really, you spoke about a lot of things in terms of the research gap between the vertical city and the horizontal city, about the need for more policies for private buses. And we often speak internally about the fact that even when it comes to electrification of buses, there's so much that's being focused on the public buses, but similar opportunities for the private sector is very low. And one thing that you really highlighted, which also Sir mentioned, was about the behavioral aspect when it comes to cycling. And it's very rare that we have champions who push through the cycling agenda even when there's pushback. This brings me to you, Shelley. We often face a lot of decision makers who do not believe in cyclists. Sir is an exception where he's constructing cycle tracks even when he gets pushback. But often the decision makers do not have, they're not, confident enough to construct cycle tracks. And there are many reasons: humidity, temperature, hilly terrains, many come out. Based on your experience, how can we change the mind of decision makers and really change behaviors like Sheriff was mentioning?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's really exciting to be with you all here. Thanks for MOA for the invitation and the ITDP team for hosting this session. Yes, behavior change and politicians that stand for it. It's a very, very important topic. And what I would like to share from the experiences we have in the Netherlands, which maybe to the Indian context can be more seen as a state rather than a country in terms of size. But it really, really depends on the political leadership which is in place, which are having the seat and has the say. And it's really the challenge for activists, for people working in the field, for the civil servants, for other politicians, to see what triggers this person internally. Is it the very nice but also emotional story that you tell about your child, also already that young, suffering from lung issues. Will there be a politician being attached by that and internally motivated to start working on it? Or is it a politician that gets way more excited about numbers, research, economic benefits, which you might need to feed on with research? So we have seen in the Netherlands that it really works to strategically think about what triggers the most. And sometimes we see with people in the field, including myself, that we are so excited about all the benefits which compact cities can bring, which cycling can bring, that we're throwing them all out, also about health and about efficiency in public space. But our experience is to focus better on the points which trigger the politician, which is having that seat, and it's not changing their mindset. It's not changing their behavior. It's looking for this internal motivation, and then it will be the best support which you can have. And there are, of course, loads of more materials, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. And there are very exciting documentaries, before and after pictures from situations in the Netherlands. And as a closure, I would like to share that actually, if we look into the Dutch developments, it's only from the late 90s. So it's only from the last 20, 30 years that this massive change has happened, and loads of them has been redesigned, not so much were new developments. So there's much to learn from that, and I'm eager to share sources and continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley, where you really you sort of brought to the forefront that the internal motivation that drives our leadership is something that we must look into. But one of the questions, one of the points that both our national and city leaders brought or spoke about was about urban sprawl. We are growing in terms of our population. Our cities are growing. How do we manage this question of urban sprawl? And Mr. Diclo, you, based on your experience of working with the national and cities in France, could you share how is France aiming to slow down this urban sprawl, and what are the actions they're taking?
Thank you very much, Aswati. Thanks for the invitation. We are working as an agency at the national and local level, and also internationally here and there. What I would say is that home, the flavor of the day is both compact cities, but also we're pretty much on livable cities, because density, you have to strike a balance between what would be needed and what the people are ready to accept, being elected people or citizen. Now, I'm just going to testify what we're doing. Not sure it's totally replicable, because obviously we don't have the same number. We have a small increase in population home, which make things easier to tackle in some sense, even though we realize that the increase in population, the increase in urbanization is double the increase of population over the years. So we got some land consumption, agriculture, which we need to preserve. At the same time, some city centers would get empty. So we're not striking the right balance. I would say the intervention on urban sprawl we try to have is both a national one and a local one. On the national level, well, I can relate to the objective we have taken in terms of France has taken in terms of sustainable development. I would like to mention one example. We took a law in 2021 on climate and resilience. The idea is to implement what we call ZAN, zero artificialization nets. That is, the idea is that we would, by 2050, the objective is not to consume more agriculture, not to occupy more agricultural land, or if you do, you have to compensate one way or another. So we're trying to stop the expansion and to densify or to make the cities more compact. How do we to achieve this? First of all, we've developed analytical tools, because that's very important to know what the situation is on the ground. Now, over the past 10 years, CEREMA has developed a tool which we call Urban Simul, which is a database which enables to to have a detailed view in your city on each property, who owns what, when was it built, so that you can anticipate the renovation. You can see where you got empty spaces, brownfields, and the densified areas, so that you can inform the policy you're going to take and move forward from that. So basically, it enables us to analyze the land market. Now, we got another one, Carto Frisch, anyway, dedicated to brownfields, to see what more clearly, more precisely what the situation is in order to densify in the long run. And of course, well, not of course, but we did create, in addition to that, a fund, a national fund for brownfields, because we know that when you want to rebuild on brownfield, usually it's more costly. To help balance the operation, this national fund run at the local and national level would help on some projects to finance them so that we can make cities more compact. Now, outside this, we've been also very involved over the years. That's one of the strongholds of CEREMA, I would say, on urban planning at different level, the regional one, the local one. Basically, urban planning is a local responsibility, even though there's a general framework at the national and regional level. So through the mobility plans, for instance, we try to push densification or to push forward more compact cities. One tool, to quote one, is the parking policy you have. Mm-hmm. According to the parking policy you will use, you would probably favor public transport or not. We try and favor density along some corridor routes, but as we've been seeing in other countries, like, we know the examples in Curitiba or wherever. Also, we try to act from the national level through calls for proposal. From time to time, we've had the fourth call for proposal on public transport, financed by the government, and through it, there are requirements for those municipalities willing to have their project financed, then to act on density. Now then, that's I wouldn't say the theory, that's the practice also, but not so easy to implement. We all know about that, because local authorities are in charge of urban planning and densification of the city. They have their own constraint. I mean, all this, of course, the state is involved, and there's at the local level, the representative of the state, the prefect there's a permanent discussion. You have to manage to come to an agreement. Not easy. Not easy, for instance, to change a policy on parkings, because at the local level, parking, development, economy, it goes together. So we try to be part of that, and through information, training, workshop, benchmarks. Then again, so that at the local level, they can read the compromise between the technical requirements and what the population is ready to accept.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Diclo. And I'm sure we're all sort of working even in the Indian cities to ensure that parking policy and parking management is put to practice. But it is great to hear about the National Fund for Brownfield Development and even the national law, which has put a date beyond which there would not be no more agricultural land would be allowed to be occupied in France. Compensated. So it's been great to hear a first round of reflections from all our speakers. We have a limitation on time. So I do want to take one round of questions once again before we open out to some remarks. We have a great audience. We'd really like to hear from our audience as well. This time, really crisp. I would like this to be a sort of a rapid fire where everyone gets one line to make. And what we'd like to hear is that if there's one action that you think we need to take to accelerate transition to these compact cities which are built with clean mobility as well, what would that one action be? Shekhar Singh, sir, over to you first.
For me, it would be, considering that we are under a development plan revision state also, as Mr. Gerald was mentioning about, say, Chennai, what you're doing with regards to master plan. I think it'll be a better integration if I could do with my transport plan and the development plan.
So integration of the CMP and master plan seems like, Gerald, you've already sort of sown a great seed out there.
Which, coming here, again, I feel we need to go back and do a better job than what we were doing till now.
Definitely, we'll make sure that that connection happens. Gerald, over to you. What is that one thing that Indian cities must do?
I'm going to complain because that's what I was going to say. Okay, so a second one. I will take a second one. A coordinated structure across agencies to actually plan and deliver those, without which you cannot actually achieve compactness. And I will just put a footnote that you need to dispel the presumption that compact means unlivable. Because a lot of people feel that, it's going to be more compact, I don't want it. But actually, quality compactness is superb because it's self-sufficient in the sense that it creates enough demand for something that can be nurtured and provide a quality environment. So that's a myth that really needs to be dispelled, and communication on that is very important.
Yes.
Ashwati, can I interject?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I think this is something which is very, very critical what he said, because in India, we compare density with sort of a little bit of an unlivability.
Yeah.
And that is how it is, whether you look at Dharvi or you look at other low income settlements, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And another thing that's happening, which probably say cities have to go even more distance, is an aspirational concept.
Yeah.
Because if we forget the aspiration in developing country, we are somewhere missing the point.
Yeah.
Now, Sharif travels by metro because he's conscious about the environment and about his own personal target. But a person traveling in the bus, the moment he gets the chance, an economic, an incentive to move from bus to car, he will not leave that chance because there's an aspiration involved.
Yes.
So I think that behavioral, aspirational, what other countries have done is something that we could also look at.
So you've definitely taken more one-liners from the others. But yeah, communicating the change in an aspirational way, and that compact is not unlivable is there. Anantha, over to you.
I think Indian cities inherently have a compact form, and it is important to retain that compact form. At least if you take some of the cities, they have a good share of non-motorized transport and they have a good footpath connectivity. If that can be restored, the need for finance can reduce a lot. And that is really important for the state to identify those cities and encourage those cities rather than leaving them to become huge metropolitan cities. Maybe that's a transition which can happen. But even the other cities, which are the metropolitan cities, there is a need for interdisciplinary urban approaches, so that the city is more sustainable, livable, and inclusive.
So retaining the good that we have, you went to that second point, which is also about an interdisciplinary approach. We'll stick to one point. Jacob, what do you think is one point that Indian cities can probably even learn from other cities?
Well, so I work at the global scale, so my answer is a little bit more global, but I think it's really building political will at the national level. So much funding and financing for transportation comes at the national level. I know it's a little bit different in the Indian context, but having that support and vision at the national level can be so critical for setting guidelines, setting standards, and really coordinating action across states, across local governments. So I'll end there.
Any country, I think, having political will is extremely vital. So thanks, Jacob, for bringing it there. Mr. Declo, what do you think is that one thing? You have one thing to choose.
Okay, the one thing would be push at the national level and governance at the local level. That's one. Push, okay. Because I do one example. We took a law in 2000 obliging municipalities to create more social housing. Now, what we've seen, if not, they would be taxed. It has helped. Now, what we see in Paris around the station, you got densification. We got other problems now because the trains are packed and we have to deal with that. This is why we're building a big network around it, from suburb to suburb, because the main problem we have is in transport is the masses are from suburb to suburb, not inside Paris itself where we manage. Now, governance at the local level, you all alluded to that. The stakeholders have got to work together. If I take the example of inland Paris, inside Paris these days, what are they working upon? Governance to announce partnership with government agencies to see where are the brownfields, where are the opportunities, but also they're reviewing all the the places where there would be opportunities with each sub-municipality, and creating a mechanism of compensation. You create one office, then you have to compensate, not compensation somewhere or another. You create one office and you compensate with housing.
Sure. Push at the national level, governance at the local level. Sharif, over to you. You will have to be crisper than Mr. Diklo. Only then we'll get to hear from the audience.
So one thing is, in terms of the shift from public to private transport, I think we did a study for DMRC, and 80% of the current users of metro said that they were using buses earlier.
Okay.
There was an intra more public transport mode shift that happened, and that usually happens in a city when your affordability goes up. One wish list, what Chandigarh is doing in terms of having a yearly quota for registration of new vehicles, and I'm taking a cue from 60% two-wheeler for PCMC. I think that's one of the wish lists for me. Yeah.
That's a great cue for Sir, and thereby inspire many other cities as well. A yearly quota for private vehicle registration. That's great. Shelley, over to you for that one-liner. Before we get one-liners from our audience, please be ready for one-liners from your end as well.
Thank you so much. I want to give the context that roughly half of all train journeys in the Netherlands start with a cycle ride. And comparing our train network is comparing it to your metro network or to your BRT network. Half of all people arrive with a cycle. Although 66% of all of them using public transport could have used the car, so they have access to a car as well, but they decide on using the the cycle, towards public transport and travel by train. So my main key takeaway since I've been at the conference since today and the pre-conversations yesterday, is the combination of non-motorized traffic and public transport. That's for me the key. And we have shown that in the Netherlands it worked.
Sounds great. So integration of the transit with non-motorized transport so that they can walk and cycle to their neighborhoods, which is what PCMC is doing, but also when integrated with the metro that they're planning, then people can also make longer distance trips with that. So with that, we're on time. We're at 5:55, which gives us an opportunity to hear from the wonderful audience that we have. It is a pleasure that we have with us Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia. Sir, you've been the OSD of the Transport Department, the ex-officio Joint Secretary of Urban Transport. What are your thoughts from this discussion? And very crisply, what is your reflection of what Indian cities must do?
Well, I think all solutions have been said, but one thing which I used to insist is the policymakers, the decision makers, whatever we preach, we must act. Your action, words will have more force when you have the conviction of action by yourself. I was trying to promote cycling. It did not happen. I started cycling to my office, and there was no parking space in the ministry. The cycle used to be parked in my office itself. And then people, they used to give me all the logics why the cycling cannot happen. And then after this, listening to them, I used to show them my cycle. I came by cycle. So I think action speaks louder than words.
Sounds great, sir. Action speaks louder than words. And thank you so much for starting today. We also see Kunal, sir, who's actually cycling. And we have the Cycles for Change program that we were running with him as well. Let me move on. Jignesh Mehta, we have you with us. You're leading work at CEPT, at HCP, etc. Why don't you share what your thoughts are about the discussion? One thing.
Oh, no, thank you so much for inviting me here. But also, it's great to hear all of your views. One thing that which I did not hear, maybe I would probably highlight, is that I think on one side we are talking about compact city, thinking about master plan level and development plan level. The other side we are actually zooming directly into the design of street. But the in-between scale is what we are not really focusing on, especially the local area plan and the town planning scheme level. And this is where I think a lot of our cities need to really work. So that's my thought on that.
Thanks, Jignesh. So we're just taking one-liners from our audience as reflections in what they think should be done as well. Akash, if you had one liner about what Indian cities need to do.
Yeah, so great comments from everyone. The one thing that I was thinking about while we are doing, the last mile and, improving transit, the user experience at the metro station for a transit user is something that we have been working on and trying to create something what we call transit culture, where if you're using the mass transit, you should be proud, happy, and the guy in the car should actually be wondering, they're having it so good, and maybe I should shift out. So something to that effect was in terms of quality of design of public spaces.
Let's create proud users for transit, really focus on the user experience. We hear that from you, Akash. Ashish, sir, you had a point to make. Can you please share what is your one-liner that needs to be added?
Yeah, I'll just take
Two-liners. Okay.
Two-liners. One is put a freeze on all flyover and underpass and these kind of projects in all cities for maybe next decade or so, because this has been the biggest culprit of why urban sprawl of cities have happened and continue to happen. Second is there are a number of greenfield projects of cities that government has planned. Take one city as a pilot and develop the goal at the beginning that it will be developed as a compact city, and apply all these principles and logic that we're discussing today into that. So if ministry takes a lead and take one greenfield city as a compact city and demonstrate how it works. Thanks.
So freezing, sir, seems to have come at the very right moment. You're saying freezing all flyover and underpasses, and then one greenfield compact example city. Sandeep, you're there. Would you have one point that you'd like to add? And I'm sorry, I do not know everyone in the audience. If anyone has one-liners that you add, you could just put your hand, because sir will need to. Yeah.
So I think having a long-term roadmap is very, very important, with short-term goals and budgets which are designed for that. And I think PCMC has done the right thing. I mean, they have a 12-year plan. It's the first time I'm listening from a city that they have a 12-year plan. Every time you talk to cities, they are talking about 3 years, 4 years. As Gerard said, they're always in a race. So I think having a long-term roadmap is very important.
Long-term roadmap with short-term goals. So, okay, so you over there, if you could just maybe.
Okay, this is Sudhir Badami. That's half line over. The other part is that I think we must see that no pedestrian is forced onto the road by seeing that all walkways are in proper condition in any given city, existing city. So all this compactness can be thought of for secondary cities, but I think the existing cities, there are people there who actually are risking their life and limb by going onto the road.
So any street on any city, whether it's existing or new, has to be constructed with safe footpaths where pedestrians can actually walk without encroachment. That's from you, Mr. Sudhir. So you had a point, if you could.
Yes, we need to establish democracy on our roads so that all pedestrians, cyclists, public transport, private cars, all they have equal rights on the road. That's very much required.
Equal rights for our road users. Democracy is the word that you use. Over to you.
Yeah, so I'm also from a mobility background, but coming from urban management education.
One line.
I feel that the housing departments and the development authorities at city level need to be integrated into these discussions. Because real estate mafia is also one huge thing that we'll need to cater when we talk about compact cities, where we'll have to accommodate everyone affordably in a core maybe, which you're calling as a compact. Because currently housing is seen as an investment thing rather than a utility in India. So that's why.
So integration and how do we manage real estate mafia? Santosh, you had a point.
With respect to the discussion here, what I noticed is there is a lot of conversation on the pull factors, like designing better cities and pulling people inside. But I think what we need to look at is charging private motor vehicles for the usage, like based on emission or based on congestion, whatever it is. And what we have learned from busy what network cities, London, is that since the implementation of UL Easy, like there's been like 70% reduction in emissions, so city has become more livable. So I think that's like a short-term goal that the Indian cities need to look at. And general, I think we discussed long back how there is this unwillingness to charge in Indian cities. So how do we break that? I think if you can answer that in a point, I think it's very helpful.
So how can we push people to embrace sustainable mobility? We're giving all the pull factors and highlighting on the need for the LEZ as well. So if there are no more, okay, last one-liner.
Hi, this is Deepthi from IIT Delhi. So, one liner comment over here is till the time we don't build, we cannot expect a behavior change. So, we need to build an infrastructure, then only we can expect. So, the policies, the finance, the investments have to be aligned so that people start using bicycles. You cannot expect people to yield to the bicycles because it is essentially a low income group mode of transport. And that's how the government has also seen it.
So the chicken and egg situation, what comes first? Like, is it the infrastructure? Is it the behavioral? So that's one piece that, infrastructure should also be prioritized. So thank you, audience, for being so wonderful and sharing these one-liners. And thank you so much, our panelists, for sharing your insightful insights. So we had quite a few discussions. We spoke about various gaps. So finance being one of the main things that we spoke about, but we also spoke about the need for one, integration of transport and urban mobility and urban development that you spoke about. So how is it that our CMP and a master plan can come together? How can we create institutions that, like an UMTA in any city, that's actually bringing all of this together, even if we are creating these plans? We spoke about the need for building political will at the national level, because there is quite a bit of funding that is required for this kind of change. There were some who spoke about yearly quotas for private motor vehicle growth as well, if possible. Chandigarh was an example that was stated. The integration that is needed between transit and non-motorized decisions. And Lohia sir mentioned about how decision makers must act on whatever that they're speaking. So that was also something. So being the champion of what you're saying was pieces that came up. The fact that we need to look at in-between scales, not just the master plan and that street design, looking at the local area plans as well. Focusing on user experience, long-term goals, and maps with short-term goals. So you've heard the rest of it as you are here. We'll definitely put together these points and share the next steps with you as well, sir. So shall I close? Yeah. Thank you, all of you. It's been fantastic having this conversation with all of you. And thank you for being so interactive with the last session as well. I was thinking there might be 2-3 pointers that we would get from the audience, but it seemed like there was a lot more of the audience that was really interested in this conversation. So thank you to one, sir, for actually bringing all of us together on this important topic, to the panelists who took their time off to be a part of this particular discussion, and to the audience, some of whom are champions of change as well, and some of whom are really making all of us come together through their activism as well. So thank you so much, everybody. So if we may request you to share.
Thank you, Aswati.
Thank you, Gerald. Now request sir to pass the memento to Mr. Shekhar Singh, sir. Could I kindly request Gerald Olivier? Can I please request Ms. Ananta? Could I please request Sharif to take the momentum from sir? Thank you so much. Thank you. Can I please invite Mr. Diklo? Can I please request you, Ms. Shelley? Jacob, could I please request you? Vaishali, can I request you to thank you for making the presentation?
We request.
And sir, could I request the mayor, ex-mayor